Moscow, Russia, May 14th, 1896. Thousands of people gather to celebrate the coronation of Tsar Nicholas Romanov II and his wife, the Empress Alexandra. For more than 300 years, the Romanov dynasty ruled the vast Russian Empire. But Nicholas's reign would be a troubled one during very troubling times.
Nicholas II, the last Romanov on the throne, was probably the last person who ever should have been on the throne. He was weak, indecisive, passive. And at the time, Russia was modernizing. And so Nicholas was facing all sorts of challenges from a society that wanted a greater voice in politics and the economy. But in fact, Nicholas was dictatorial, authoritarian, in many ways very brutal. And he insisted on plunging the country into what would become the First World War, and was never able to sort of guide the political institutions into the modern era, and he failed in just an epic fashion.
Less than 10 years into his reign, Tsar Nicholas was confronted with worker strikes and military mutinies. Russians across the country were upset that while the aristocracy lived a life of luxury, average people struggled to make ends meet. With civil unrest building momentum throughout the empire, the Romanov family lived a secluded life in the capital city of St. Petersburg. In 1904, Alexandra gave birth to their fifth child, a boy, whom they named Alexei. But the joy of having an heir apparent to the Romanov dynasty was quickly overshadowed.
Alexandra gives birth to a son. Glory, glory, glory. Except the son has a hereditary medical condition, hemophilia. He lacks a component in his blood that allows it to clot. So, to understand Alexandra, you have to understand this is one of the reasons she will become drawn to mysticism.
In order to ensure Alexei's well-being, Nicholas and Alexandra sought the help of a mysterious Siberian mystic named Grigory Rasputin.
Grigory Rasputin was born around 1869, and he was a stranik, a kind of traveling preacher. Not a priest, not a monk, but what he really was a shaman. Because what he's claiming is that the spirits have spoken to me, and they have given me powers. So what are the powers he claimed to have? Well, the two most important, prophecy and healing.
In the early 20th century, Russians as a whole were obsessed by the notion of mystics and peasant holy men. And that's the way Rasputin was finally able to gain access to the palace and to meet Nicholas and Alexandra for the first time, because they were also fascinated by people like this.
Beginning in 1906, Rasputin acted as an important faith healer for young Alexei and a trusted prophet for Tsar Nicholas.
From the very beginning that Rasputin makes contact with the Romanovs and is embraced by them as a friend, it's the actual word they use, people become jealous, they become envious. You have courtiers and mighty aristocrats who don't get to go to court. They would say, here this quote-unquote dirty peasant gets to go in, why don't I get to go in? Which was the sign of an aristocratic family. By late 1916, there's already been several attempts on the life of Rasputin, and he begins to come to this realization that he's a marked man. He is not going to live much longer.
Rasputin tells the Empress, if I'm killed by the nobles, that will mean the end of you and your dynasty, and none in your family will live more than 2 years. Now, that's a pretty scary prophecy because, you know, he had mystical powers from the forces beyond.
Shortly after making his dark prediction, Rasputin was invited to the Yusupov Palace in St. Petersburg, where several Russian noblemen poisoned, shot, and ultimately drowned the Siberian mystic in the freezing waters of the Moika River.
It took a lot of effort to kill Rasputin. But it was a treacherous murder, and they did kill him. It was at a very bad time because there was nobody else to give advice to Nicholas II. But it was not as bad as what came after.
July 1918. After 300 years of Romanov rule, Tsar Nicholas II is overthrown by the communist Bolsheviks. In the aftermath of the revolution, Nicholas, his wife Alexandra, and their 5 children are exiled to the remote town of Yekaterinburg.
At that time, the decision is made to execute the family. They are awakened at night and forced to go down to the cellar. The person in charge, he says, by the decree of the people, to prevent your liberation, you are to be executed, and shoots at the Tsar. The Tsar is killed immediately, and so was his wife, of course the royal family. Rasputin's prophecy of doom was absolutely correct. He was killed by aristocrats, and after that, less than 2 years, Tsar was gone, and his family was gone.